Welcome back to Disturbed Reality. Since creating this channel, we have covered some of the most graphic and heinous acts caught on camera, whether that be executions perpetrated by drug cartels, war crimes, random acts of murder, and even horrible accidents. The reality is, despite feeling empathy for the majority of victims in these videos, you do become jaded by the visceral nature of the content that is on your screen. I guess you could say you become desensitized to a certain degree. While emotionally, the majority of cases that I've covered have affected me, the reality is, it takes a lot to shock me in terms of visceral gore. That brings us to today's topic, a savage case from Guatemala, that being the brutal machete murder of Alejandra Ico Chub, also known on forums as Miss Pacman. As I'm sure you guys are aware, many of these graphic shock videos develop a lure and almost become creepypastas in their own right. We've seen that, for example, with the likes of Funky Town, 3 Guys 1 Hammer, 1 Man 1 Jar, and even the diving face split video. These videos gained much infamy in internet subculture, which is why I'm surprised that this video isn't more well known, considering the graphic nature and knowing how internet edgelords get off and how they operate. Truth be told, I'd never heard of this video until somebody recommended it to me. They did so with the disclaimer that this was one of the worst things that they'd seen online. And I have to say, they weren't lying. From what I've researched online, the video was released around 2018 to 2019, and upon its release, there was much confusion in regards to the case and why this violent act transpired. Many people speculated that this was just another case of cartel violence, but as the days and weeks passed and more information was revealed, it became apparent that this video wasn't related to cartel activities. Instead, it in fact was related to domestic violence, which is honestly something I never thought I would cover on this channel. Now, me personally, I've never had any experience with domestic violence, nor have I known anybody affected by domestic violence. But having said that, you never know what goes on behind closed doors. Now, thanks to you guys, we've built up a pretty big following on this channel. Because of that, law of average would suggest that there will be certain people who have gone through domestic violence who watch this channel, so just take this as a trigger warning. This video might not be for you. I don't usually do trigger warnings on my channel, but because of the subject matter, I wanted to give you guys the heads up if you wanted to check out. But nevertheless, let's talk about a little backstory. On the 29th of October 2018, 32-year-old Alejandra Ico Chub was dismembered with a machete while she was in bed by 42-year-old Mario Osvaldo Tut Ical. After the attack, Mario fled the scene and went on the run. According to some neighbours, at night they heard Alejandra's cries and pleas for help, but out of fear, they did not approach the house. After realising that the murderer had escaped, they entered the house, and what they found was horrifying. They called the police and the emergency services, but because they lived 45 minutes from the nearest town, their alerts came very late. By the time the emergency services arrived, Alejandra was already dead. What's even more disturbing, somebody used Alejandra's cell phone to record a video which showed the aftermath of the attack and her agonising last moments of life. It's unclear who recorded this video, whether it was the attacker Mario or the neighbours who discovered her. What's also unclear is how this video ended up online. That remains a mystery. In relation to the crime, much speculation has been spread on social media regarding the motive. One persistent rumour is that Alejandra cheated on Mario and he snapped, and this was the result. Quite frankly, I believe this to be a narrative created out of thin air. In fact, reports online indicate that neighbours of Mario tried to have him expelled from their local community due to his violent tendencies and the numerous assaults he committed on Alejandra. So it seems, on the surface at least, that people were aware of the dynamics of this particular relationship. And ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, that makes this case even more sad because this could have been prevented if law enforcement intervened and took this case seriously. Another sad fact of this case was that Alejandra wasn't the only victim. She left behind 3 children who no longer have their mother or father, and allegedly they were there in the house during the murder. Thankfully, Mario was caught shortly after. He was detained on the 1st of November 2018, and I'm presuming right now he's serving prison time, and hopefully he never gets out. But nevertheless, what happens in the video? First and foremost, it is worth saying there are different versions and edits of this video. The one I saw was around a minute long. The video opens up and it's being recorded in a dark room. The first thing that struck me was the screaming in the background. You see the camera pan to the floor and you see a beam of a flashlight darting across the ground. The flashlight then illuminates a severed hand on the ground. The screaming still persists in the background. The camera then pans up to a bed in the room, and on that bed was Alejandra. The bed was soaked in blood. Alejandra had both her hands cut off. You could see the full extent of her injuries, and my descriptive skills aren't great, but essentially, Alejandra had been struck in the face so hard with a machete, she had a horizontal wound going across her face that was so deep, it actually reached her ears. So essentially the wound was halfway up her face, basically right in the middle of the nose, and it was a horizontal cut. That's the reason this video is referred to as Miss Pacman, because the wound was so deep, it almost looks like an exaggerated mouth. But nevertheless, somehow Alejandra is still alive, and at this point you realise the screaming in the background isn't her, it's actually somebody else in the house, and according to rumours, it's actually her children who are screaming. The camera pans on her face. It's clear that she's still conscious. Her eyes dart around the room in pain and fear. As the camera pans on her, you hear her struggling for breath due to the sheer amount of blood. You hear the loud, constant gurgling as she's trying to cling on to life. You also hear her try to scream, but due to the injury, it's extremely muffled. The best way I can describe the sound is that it's very similar to a young baby crying. It's almost like the sounds are coming from her throat, more so than her mouth, if that makes sense. You can also hear a male's voice behind the camera. Now the question I have, is this the neighbours who discovered her? And if it is, why on earth are they recording? Or was it her partner who was responsible for this horrible murder? The camera stays fixated on her for a further 30 or 40 seconds. You see her writhing around in pain. You hear her attempt to scream, and at one point the camera actually pans in a little closer to the wound, and you get a full extent of just how deep it is. It's literally 3/4 the way through her head. To put it bluntly, it's a hard watch, and although you don't see the violent acts be committed on camera, the aftermath, quite frankly, is traumatizing. Now of course, I've read about many terrible domestic violence cases, many of which have ended in murders, and those cases always do get to me more than most. Interrelationship, interfamily murders, things like that. Those sort of stories tend to get to me a lot, but to see it on camera takes it to a whole new level. So this video was one of the harder ones I've watched since doing this channel, I won't lie. In fact, I've actually seen people compare this video to other graphic videos online, such as Funky Town for example, and I see where they're coming from. This video is extremely bad. I know people like to hear about what's the worst thing you've seen in terms of pure gore. I would still say the likes of Funky Town and the Guerrero flaying are worse in terms of pure gore, but emotionally, knowing this case to some degree and knowing the backstory behind it, it makes these videos much harder to watch, for me at least. In terms of pure gore, it does take a lot to shock me, but having said that, this one was extremely bad. It was hard to watch, and for this one, given the backstory behind it and, you know, the circumstances surrounding this case, I really wouldn't recommend that you check it out. Ultimately, it's one of the sadder cases that I've covered on this channel, and shortly after this video was shot, Alejandra was pronounced dead. I believe she was pronounced dead before she even got to the hospital. And again, the sad thing is, she leaves 3 children behind. And the eeriest thing about this video are the screams in the background. Many people online say the screams were from her children, so that means her children would have saw her in that state. I mean, that's going to live with them for the rest of their lives. How can you even come back from that? So not only did Mario destroy Alejandra's life and take her life, he also destroyed the lives of her 3 children. So fingers crossed that they can come through this and live some sort of a normal life going forwards. But yeah, I mean, this case was one of the harder ones that I've researched. I would say it's up there with 3 Guys, 1 Hammer, for example. That case to me has always got to me, and this one is the same. So yeah, I mean, horrible case. I never thought I would cover domestic violence on my channel, to be honest. It's a bit of a heavy topic, and I can't offer any advice on it. I mean, I can say get help, that's easier said than done. The sad fact is, more than likely there's going to be at least a couple of people who are more than likely still experiencing this now. So, again, all I can really do is offer you my best wishes. I pray that things get better for you, and if you want to contact me, please feel free. I mean, again, I can't do anything, I can't offer you any advice, but I can always listen, so if you want to, you can always contact me. I'm not really sure how else to tackle this topic, if I'm being quite frank. But, yeah, as always, thank you guys for the support. I'd also like to shout out Cries, who actually made me some custom tracks for my channel, one of which I am using on this video. Let him know in the comments on what you think, and also follow his channel. I've linked it in the pinned comments. Honestly, it means the world when you guys do that. I mean, without even asking me, I've had people create content like, you know, images, intros, music, without even asking, taking time out of their day to help the channel. That's extremely humbling, and I'm eternally grateful. So shout out to Crais. Thank you very much, bro. Much appreciated. And yeah, as always, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.